Griffin Canning suffered a non-contact lower leg injury in tonight's game against the Atlanta Braves, and here's what we know so far. The New York Mets had shared that Canning is officially ruled out for the remainder of the game with what they are classifying as an ankle injury, and that he's going to have some further testing. However, as we look at the injury replay, it looks like that this injury could be a lot more serious than just an ankle injury. On the injury replay, which we'll look at in a moment, it looks like that as Canning goes back and plants with that left leg, as he does this, we see a recoiling go up that calf musculature, which is often really consistent with an Achilles injury. So with today's video, what we're going to do is we're going to first look at the injury replay. I'm going to then talk about the relevant anatomy of the potential structures involved. And finally, from there, we'll go over the best and worst case scenario. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to my channel. If you're not familiar with me, my name is Nick Gallo and I'm a doctor of physical therapy. And with my channel, I take a look at sports injuries and I try to explain them so that they're a little bit easier to understand. I'll also talk about the relevant anatomy for that particular injury as well as the rehab process. If you enjoy this sort of content and you want to see more of it, please hit that thumbs up and subscribe to the channel because I will be making more of these videos in the future regarding sports injuries, rehabilitation, and other physical therapy related content. Also, if you have any comments or questions, please leave those in the comment section below. So we see right here on the injury replay that as Canning is going to throw the pitch, after this, he's going to reach back with that left foot plant and immediately fall to the ground in obvious pain. As we zoom in and look at this injury replay in slow motion, once again, what we see here is we see a recoiling going up that lower leg area, specifically into that calf musculature. So here I have a model of the ankle joint. And so to form the ankle joint, we're going to have the shin bone, which is also known as the tibia, that's going to come down and form the medial malleolus. On the outside here, we have the fibula bone, which is going to come down and form that lateral malleolus. And as we look on the inside of the model here, we have that talus bone, and these structures together form the ankle joint. Let's talk about the four main motions at the ankle. The first one is a motion known as dorsiflexion, where the toes are going to be pointed upward like this. The opposite of that is going to be plantar flexion, where the toes are pointed down. As I flip the model this direction, we have inversion, where the foot is going to be coming in that classic ankle sprain position. And finally, we have eversion, where that foot is going to be coming outwards. So let's go over the anatomical structure of the Achilles tendon. We have three muscles that are located in the back of the lower leg, or that calf region. The first and largest calf muscle is known as the gastrocnemius. Another muscle slightly deeper to that is a muscle known as the soleus muscle. And finally, we have a small muscle known as the plantaris muscle. And these three muscles are going to come together and form that Achilles tendon and attach right here on that calcaneus bone. These calf muscles, as well as the Achilles tendon, are going to get contracted and engaged in any sort of activity or motion that's going to require any sort of explosion or any sort of push off from the foot. And in order to do this, that foot is going to have to go into that plantar flex position. When the calf muscles and the Achilles tendon are going to get stretched, that's when the foot is going to go into that dorsiflexion position. There are a few mechanisms of injury that can involve the Achilles tendon. The major one that we see is anytime a person is going to come back with the foot, they're going to plant, have the heel on the ground, and try to explode forward, which is unfortunately what we see in this video. So anytime somebody is going to plant the foot back with the heel on the ground, that's going to put a lot of excessive stretch going through the Achilles tendon as well as the calf musculature, and it can lead to an injury to that Achilles tendon. It can also lead to an injury of one or several of those calf muscles. Oftentimes what we see in these Achilles injuries is we see also that it is non-contact, which is also unfortunately very consistent with the injury in this case. We've seen this time and time again in sports, unfortunately, where somebody is going to go in this particular position and it's going to result in the worst case scenario. The most recent example of this is going to be Tyrese Halliburton, which just happened a few nights ago. Because the Mets had shared that he's officially out with an ankle injury, I want to go over what typical mechanisms would result in an ankle injury. The first mechanism that we all often associate with involving the ankle is going to be that inversion ankle sprain, or somebody rolling the foot inwards. Anytime somebody does this, this is going to affect the ligaments that are located laterally or on the outside portion of the ankle, but it does involve that foot rolling inwards. The opposite is something known as an eversion ankle sprain, where the foot is going to be going out just like this, and that is going to affect the ligaments that are located medially or on the inside portion of the ankle. But once again, looking at the video, it doesn't seem that his foot is going to roll inwards or outwards. We see that it plants fairly neutral, and then from there, that's when the injury is going to occur. Another aspect that makes me think that the Achilles is involved in this particular injury is the fact that as he is walking off of the field, it looks like he is landing very flat with that foot, and he's not getting any mobility going through the foot, which is required for a normal gait pattern. This is because anytime that Achilles tendon is going to be involved, anytime we go to stretch it, it's going to be extremely painful. So as we see him walk off of the field with assistance, that foot stays in a very neutral position. If an athlete or a patient comes in and we suspect an Achilles tendon rupture, what we're going to do first is we are going to do something known as the Thompson test. And this is a special test we can do to rule in an Achilles rupture. What we're going to do is have the person lie on their stomach. What we're going to do is we're going to squeeze on that calf muscle. And as we do this with somebody who has an intact Achilles tendon, this is going to basically plantar flex the foot slightly, because as we do that, it's doing an artificial contraction of the calf. If somebody unfortunately has a full Achilles rupture, nothing is going to happen in the foot. And I've talked about this in some other videos, but I have had this personally with somebody who has had an acute Achilles tendon rupture, and the foot did not move at all as I was doing that Thompson test. I also felt a significant drop off as I put my fingers down the Achilles tendon, showing that it had unfortunately been severed. The gold standard, of course, to diagnose Achilles injuries is going to be the MRI, and this brings us to that grading system for Achilles injuries. They are grades 1, 2, and 3. In a grade 1 Achilles injury, this is where you're going to get some micro tearing of the Achilles. In a grade 2, this is where you're getting significant tearing, but it's considered a partial tear because it's not fully ruptured. And finally, in a grade 3, this is the absolute worst case scenario, and you're going to get a full tear or full rupture of the Achilles tendon. So let's go over the best and worst case scenario here. Because I do think the Achilles tendon is involved, the worst case scenario, of course, is going to be a full Achilles rupture, but that's going to be confirmed via MRI. More of the best case scenario here would be any sort of a partial calf tear. And we have seen this in athletes where somebody has had a grade 2 calf injury where they have had some partial tearing, and we did see a recoiling effect going up the lower leg. Another best case scenario here would be if it is something like an ankle sprain. Once again, based on the injury replay and how he reacted afterwards, it doesn't seem to me like that is a very big possibility, but I could always be incorrect because I am just basing my opinion on just the replay. So we'll need to wait and hear a little bit more specific information regarding Canning's case. We wish him the best of luck moving forward. Hopefully it is not the worst case scenario involving a full Achilles rupture, and he can get back to the field fairly quickly. Thank you so much for tuning into my video today. If you enjoy this sort of content, I'm going to go ahead and link one of my playlists so that you can watch more of the injuries that I've talked about in the past. Thank you so much again for tuning in, and I'll see you next time.